We have breaking news in the Pac-12 for you this afternoon. Sources just before the show started reached out to us and told us that Arizona State, and Utah are going through the process of moving to the Big 12. Now, what that means is this is something we've already known, and we've talked about this. But when they're working together as three, this goes back to what we've been reporting since last Thursday, that the Big 12 would, in fact, go to 16. I think there's been a lot of talk about the Big 12 just wants to add one school, and that's it, to go to 14. That never made a lot of sense to us. They have far further potential by adding Arizona State and Utah to go with that, to have 4 teams joining to get to 16. You are on par then with the SEC. You are on par with the ACC. Now, our other story on the Big Ten that's coming, obviously the Big Ten is going to be behemoth, but at this moment in time, I think we are very close now, as close as we have ever been to the extinction of the Pac-12. And our source confirmed to us this afternoon that Arizona State, and Utah have been talking as a group. They have communicated on this. This went back to last week with Colorado. And I think what we talked about on the show, and what a lot of people have talked about, frankly, that move by Colorado started conversations. I don't believe that Colorado is the reason these schools are leaving the Pac-12. I still maintain malfeasance, irresponsible management, terrible dealings in the television industry. That's why you are seeing these schools leave the Pac-12. But right now, today, I don't think there's any doubt that the final nail in this Pac-12 coffin, if you will, was in fact the presentation that was given yesterday afternoon. I think that pretty much cemented the idea that there is no future in the Pac-12. There is no promised land in the Pac-12. And I'll continue to say the dream that everybody in this conference continues to hang on to of somehow rising from the ashes like the Big 12 did, friends, it's time to let that go and get real about surviving as an athletic department. It's over. The dream is dead in the Pac-12, and Arizona State, and Utah, Jake, leaving those three, if they in fact are out, regardless of what the Big Ten does, the Pac-12 is dead.
Yeah, and I think that, as the two Arizona schools in Utah's movement gains traction, it's forcing the hand of the Big Ten, and I think that's the thing that we have to appreciate and understand is that if Arizona State, and Utah are going to leave the Pac-12. That basically ends the conference and essentially opens the door, obviously, to the Big Ten without guilt, right? Because remember that whole concept, right? We've talked about it a lot on the show that the Big Ten and really the Big 12 didn't want to be seen as two conferences raiding the Pac-12, and by raiding the Pac-12, killing the Pac-12. They didn't want to be seen as having blood on their hands, if you will. And so for me, when I look at this situation, it makes sense why the Arizona schools and Utah would operate together in a move. We've told you that for several months, that it wouldn't just be one team going, that these schools would group together and would move in what was called pods back then. So this is not surprising at all, this behavior. This is exactly what we felt like would happen. But I think the really interesting part of this is all this reporting on the Big Ten's activities and how aggressive, the Big Ten has gotten in their conversations. Because, if Utah and the Arizona schools leave for the Big 12, the Pac-12 is dead. And now Utah, Washington, Stanford, and Cal need a home. So if they need a home and the Big Ten is willing to go, up to 20? You have to take them, in my opinion, because it just makes sense financially. And there was a lot of smoke about, well, hey, how are they going to pay for these schools? And you'll see a lot of these reporters saying that, the CBSs and the NBCs won't come back to the table. The truth of the matter is, we told you in May that those conversations already happened. Tony Petitti and the conference already knew that NBC and CBS would, in fact, come up with more money to pay for those 4 schools. So it's not a question of if the TV partners will pay for those schools. And the other question we keep getting is, well, what about Fox? Well, Fox is not a late window opportunity for the Big Ten. Fox controls Big Noon Kickoff, right? So they're the early window. So when I look at what's happening with the Arizona schools in Utah, that basically, to me, makes perfect sense. No surprises. But through that, you're triggering the Big Ten, to which I say through that, you're triggering the end of the conference as we know it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. And I think, you look at this situation with Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah. That's not where this conference ended. This conference ended with and lies is strong.
Mm-hmm.
The moment that Kirk Schultz began his tenure at Washington State, this conference died.
Facts.
And I think Kirk Schultz has been wildly irresponsible with his words. He is the subject of an ethics complaint right now at Washington State. He is a guy that, frankly, I think has constantly put out misinformation. And I think the great radio wizard of the Northwest, I can't help but believe that he has been fed information by Kurt Schultz. We saw it with Heather Dinich.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at some of the language that Kirk Schultz has used, and you listen to the things that he has said, and I just don't know, how is this guy the chairman of the board of directors in the Pac-12?
Media rights, where are we now?
We've had really, really good conversations with major media outlets and recognizable ones. Everybody goes, oh yeah, I can click on the TV and watch that. Over the last 6 months, ESPN's a great example. They laid off a whole bunch of employees. Yeah. If you said, when would be the worst time in the last 6 years to try and negotiate a media deal, probably the last 5 months is going to be pretty close to the worst. And so what's been happening is we've continued to have those conversations with recognizable major media outlets. They're very interested in the Pac-12.
Only they weren't. They weren't very interested. And you add that to this news today, and then ask yourself, what is the impact of the horrendous messaging from George Kliavkoff, the commissioner of the Pac-12, on this league in regard to the Big Ten?
Does that mean you are confident that there will be no schools leaving for the Big Ten?
Listen, I think if schools would have left for the Big Ten, they would have left for the Big Ten already. And also what I will tell you is I'm very focused on things that are in my control. Things that are not within my control, I find no value in spending time on.
Well, what are you spending your time on? And maybe it's apropos that last picture in that collage that you saw there was with Michael Crow and Ray Anderson, the athletic director at Arizona State, Ray Anderson, because Ray Anderson was on a podcast early June. And of course, now today we on this show are breaking the news that Arizona State, and Utah are in the process of moving to the Big 12, according to our sources. Listen to what Ray Anderson said on June 13th.
Well, we're just very frankly, and Dr. Crow said this, and I've said this, we're solidly in the Pac-12, Pac-10. Call it what you want. It's the Pac. And that's where we really believe we belong and we want to be, with a lot of like-minded schools with very good competition and really elite academics. That's important to us. So we don't talk or think about other conferences, very frankly. At one point, there was some discussion last summer about whether or not with the ACC we might think of some scheduling alliance so that some of your non-conference competitions would be consistently with ACC teams and then get some continuity in the scheduling. But beyond that, very frankly, there's been no interest in talking about any of the other conferences. And I'll say it emphatically. I have no interest personally as the AD. I don't make the call finally. That would be the president and the Board of Regents. But I, as an AD, am very committed to the Pac-12.
I have no interest in other conferences. Fast forward to today, in fact, this morning, when Sun Devil Stadium in Tempe got a naming rights deal. And if you go look at Arizona State Sun Devil football on Twitter, it's comical. The comments section, they did a deal with a credit union for their new stadium. So, of course, the athletic director would be there. And, of course, because we are blood-sucking leeches in the media. Of course, the media is going to ask that same Ray Anderson his thoughts on Arizona State and the Pac-12.
How do you feel? Where do you think it's going? How do you feel about it?
Well, I really, I know you have to ask, but we're not really commenting on that now because it's in a state where credibility is dependent on confidentiality. And so I can't respond to that other than to tell you I remain extremely hopeful and understand personally that no matter how it ends up, Arizona State will be in a good spot.
I'm sorry.
Ray?
No matter how it ends up, Arizona State's going to land in a good spot. Now, call me crazy. But did he listen to that Jed Fish podcast where Jed Fish a month ago said the exact same thing about Arizona?
Arizona's going to have a place to go. And that's what I tell our recruits.
Be all right.
That's what I tell our donors. That's what I tell our families of current personnel. We have a great brand. And we have a great basketball program, we have a great softball program, a great baseball program, and I believe we have the opportunity to have an incredible football program.
Yeah.
We're fine.
Yeah.
Where we play our road games, we'll wait and see for our president. But we are locked in and loaded for this season, and we're going to try to just be where our feet are, which is right now in the Pac-10.
Remarkable again how similar the language is. Remarkable. And so on the news today that our sources in the Pac-12 are telling us that Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah are in fact working to move to the Big 12. And one other really interesting point, and admittedly, we didn't have a lot of time with this person we were talking to because it was a very quick conversation right before the show started. But this person said something that I thought was very interesting that now, once I talk to this person again, I'll ask. This person straight up said there's no Board of Regents to worry about. You don't have to worry about a Board of Regents. Like, the move is just like flippantly, the move is done. Now, you'll note that in executive session, as we told you, the Arizona Board of Regents met yesterday for about 27 seconds and then went to executive session and talked about Arizona moving to the Big 12. And there is no question that we have been told repeatedly they know, the Arizona Board of Regents are well aware that they cannot stop Arizona and Arizona State from acting autonomously, acting for themselves, separately of the other. But that both Michael Crow at Arizona and Bobby Robbins at Arizona and Michael Crow at Arizona State are well aware that they're stronger together. I think as soon as I heard that, it was a formality that Arizona and Arizona State were going to the Big 12. And it has been, I will say, and Jake, I don't know what you think, because Jake and I have the conversations together generally. You hear the same stuff that I hear when we're talking to these people.
Yeah.
I think there has been a pretty strong shift in tone from Utah. I think that Utah very much was the loyal Pac-12 soldier until it was time to survive. And it feels like to me that the leadership at Utah, the leadership at Utah has seen the future and they recognize they have to act. They don't have a choice now.
Well, I think what's happened here is that, and again, Colorado's not the reason the conference is in the position it's in, right? But I think there's no denying that Colorado leaving ultimately shook people. Right?
Yes.
It surprised people. And whether you think it should have surprised people or not doesn't matter. The reality is it did. And so ultimately what's happened here, in my opinion, again, based on the conversations that I listened to, is that Colorado goes to the Big 12. And really, let's wind it back further. The media day thing happens. People start asking questions. Then Colorado goes to the Big 12. Then I think we get a phone call last week where someone's frustrated. And then this week, the tone has changed a little bit. It's as if it went from, as you said, hey, we're loyal to this conference. Yes, Colorado left, but if the group of 9 is still here, we can find a way to expand with San Diego State. And if George can just present us with anything doable with a media rights deal, we're going to stay together. But the tenor of that changed after George came up with essentially nothing in the Apple deal.
To your point, across the Pac-12 board. Across the board.
Yeah.
Because we talked to a lot of different, like the person who called and lit us up last week over a tweet. And we tweeted about this. We took a ration of crap over the tweet. But it's, at this point, been proven justified. That person, by the way, did call us and apologize. That should be noted.
And I appreciated it.
But it's just that you can tell the pressure these schools are under. And the biggest issue in the Pac-12 is athletic. You're supposed to be that. You're supposed to be that person who's lucky to be here, and you just need to not make problems. That's what athletics in the Pac-12 feels like. You know, like, hey, you know, I know I'm not supposed to be in the room, and I'm just going to be over here in the corner. I won't even fart. I'm not going to make noise. Nothing.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like athletics are in the Pac-12. And anymore now, you can't be that.
Well, and I think Utah shifted that way as well in a sense where it's like, you know, Utah, again, was the loyal soldier who was just trying to see the Pac-12 through. And at one point, I respected the concept of, hey, Brett, look, man, we appreciate the opportunity that you're giving us to come to the Big 12, but we got to know the number first. We got to know what we're actually looking at first. Okay, I can respect that.
Yes.
But now we're at a point where Colorado's gone. You know what the deal is. It's the writing's on the wall, and now it's gone. And this is the portion that I think people need to appreciate because it's happened very quickly. We've gone from, hey, we're loyal to the Pac-12. We need to see this thing through. Even though Colorado left, we're still loyal. We can expand with San Diego State, and we're still the Pac-10. We're good. We've gone from that to, hey, dude, this $15 million, PCA or PAC, whatever the nomenclature is, right? Like basically pay us every time we sign up someone on a subscription with Apple. Like that setup isn't going to work for our conference. And it's especially not going to work for our conference when we've got a deal over here. So now Utah's been put in a position where they've said, okay, we have a good relationship with Bobby Robbins down at Arizona. We've told you that. It's not, it's just fact.
And let me read you. I was messaging with somebody about what the cost per acquisition could be, CPA, which is what Jake was
CPA
mentioning.
Yeah.
And this person works in TV, and so this person did some research and did some numbers. For a Pac-9 school to get paid Big 12 money, they would need to sell 3.7 million subscriptions for just that one school, not including production or distribution cost. The assumption is Apple keeps the ad revenue, the schools keep the subscription fees. I'm just not sure Pac-9 schools could sell that many subs. 36 million for the entire conference. Is there anybody, and that's pretty close, by the way, to the math that we were calculating on the show yesterday.
Yeah.
Because this is the second person who said, we talked to another TV person who said it's about 30 million subscriptions the Pac-12 would have to sell. Can you imagine that each one of these Pac-12 schools selling 3 million subscriptions to Apple TV? I can't. It was never going to work.
Well, and it goes back to the whole concept of TV viewership in general, right? Like we all know, hey, Oregon State or Stanford or Washington State or any of the lower tier schools in the Pac right now are not drawing 1 million people a telecast. When you compare them to like USC, Oregon, Washington, those schools that carry the water in the Pac-12, it would be the same thing. So let's not pretend or deny the fact that the big brands in the Pac, Utah, Oregon, Washington, those schools would need to sell 7, 8, 9 million subscriptions to cover up for the fact that Oregon State or Washington State can only sell 1 million. I mean, that's traditional economics in its perfect form, dude. Like, that's why I don't think you can do this deal at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I really struggle with the idea that we're going to label somebody in this conference. Oh, they're the ones that put a bullet in the conference. I don't think, and I think that's wholly unfair.
Yeah.
If you hang that scarlet letter on Colorado, right? Let's deal in fact. Colorado's left. If you're the one that says, well, Colorado's the one that killed this conference, they're not, though. Well, Arizona leaving, they're not, though. But what about Oregon, Washington? They're not, though. It's Larry Scott and then by continuation, George Kliavkoff. But really, it's the presidents in this conference.
Yeah.
It is the fact that you have multiple presidents at Stanford and now at Washington State that are involved in ethics issues, where you have the president at Stanford, who is a researcher by trade, having to resign after his ethics were called into question, which is wild to me.
Yeah.
You have Kirk Schultz, who's involved currently in an ethics complaint about him killing an investigation. And now he is sitting as the chairman of the board. He has routinely been the one that has fed the flames of negativity by consistently putting out, at least being polite about it, the exact wrong information about the TV deal. These are the people that are at fault here.
Yeah.
The Mark Tessier-Levine's at Stanford having to resign in humiliation. It's Carol, if you want to point to an administrator, Carol Fault, Carol Fault is not at fault.
If anything,
Carol Fault, her name
Carol
is Fault.
Fault and stuff, you know.
She leaving with USC, I can see that might be the first act of treason, but it wasn't treasonous, it was survivalist.
Yeah, it goes further back than that. If anything, I would say Carol deserves credit for having vision, understanding, hey, this is where we are, because now that was a year and a month ago, right? Or what was that? Yeah, a year and a month ago or so, whatever that was. Like, you're talking about someone who evaluated the conference in her own opinion, said, hey, I see the Big 12's coming. I know they just hired a new commissioner. I know where Brett Yormark comes from. I know what he's capable of. I don't like the outlook right there. So she should not be blamed for where this conference is at. She simply should be given credit for having vision, just the same way Colorado is, just the same way Utah and Arizona are, right? They're not. They're one and the same. Even though they've all left at different times, it's one and the same, dude.
You cannot blame Colorado, Arizona State, or Utah. Arizona State, they're just stupidly incompetent.
Yeah.
Michael Crow has blindly supported Larry Scott and now George Kliavkoff, as is evidenced by the comments we played from Ray Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like a blind support. You're kind of a co-conspirator in the absolute incompetence that has taken place in this conference. But if you go back to our original reporting here on the Big Ten, and I think this is important because today the news broke that Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal are joining the Big Ten. That broke today on August 2nd.
The Monty Show.
We have exclusively reported on this show the Big Ten has gone back to its TV partners. And remember who's involved in this deal. You've got Fox, who's got the early kickoff, big noon, Saturday, Big Ten, your mom's house, kicking off football on a Saturday on Fox.
Right.
Then the 3:30 window goes to CBS and the late window goes to NBC. CBS and NBC have agreed to come back to the table with a little more money and supply finances to bring in Stanford, Cal, Oregon, and Washington. Should that be available to them? Should that happen? I mean, that's what is that, May 24th?
Yeah.
It's May 24th. Almost 3 months ago. So, hey man, I think, based on what everybody else, like Dan Wetzel has been reporting today, that Tony Petitti has been doing due diligence on Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal. I mean, maybe they've renewed that. They did their due diligence in mid-May.
Yeah, let's cut the crap here. right? Tony Petitti didn't just wake up today and be like, oh, yeah, well, today seems like a good idea to go ahead
I
and
better
call Phil
figure
Knight.
out if Phil Knight's legit.
Right? Today seems like a good day to see if Phil Knight can come up with a Big Ten special for week 1 next year. No, that's not what's going on here, dude. This conversation with these 4 schools being a, quote, package deal is not new. It's not broken today. It was broken then by us. And the point here is that Tony Petitti, much like Brett Yormark, I might add, is somebody who is not an administrator. He's not like an educational person.
Tony
This guy's
Petitti's
done business,
he's
dude.
a TV guy. He came from
Yeah.
NBC. But I think it's hysterical. You'll remember we tweeted and took a ton of heat for this tweet. We tweeted that our sources had told us, well, hey, the Big Ten wants to add, but they don't want to be seen as raiding the Pac-12.
Right.
Dan Wetzel today said the key remains the Big Ten doesn't want to be predatory, would only move if other dominoes fall in the Pac-12.
So let's review. What did we just say to start the show? Utah, Arizona, and ASU are now together based on our sources moving to the Big 12.
Yes.
So now that that's happening, right? And I think it's a super important point when it comes to the Big Ten. Colorado going wasn't enough, and you need to understand that, right? Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal. Remember, we're cleared and vetted, and everything was cool. And those, and if it were going to happen, those schools are ready to go. But Colorado wasn't the catalyst here for the Big Ten starting to move. It's now this conversation, and this is why I continue to tell you guys: don't buy into just the national reporter telling you something's happening. Because once they start reporting it, it's likely that they're 3 weeks behind on it. Honestly, and I'm not even being disrespectful. Their job is to report when they hear it from those people. Those people are never going to give it to those guys in current time, right? So that's why I say, trust me when I tell you guys.
Trust me, bro.
The Utah, Arizona schools relationship is why the Big Ten is now able to act.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it is not surprising at all that you're seeing significant movement now. And I think this is, as our source said today, Colorado was just the beginning. Colorado's just the beginning. That's as straightforward as I think it needs to be said. And so, listen, if you're just tuning in, number one, please hit the like button. Appreciate everybody watching. And we are, in 30 minutes, we are well over 5,000 views already. So if you're watching, please hit the thumbs up. Give us a like. It really helps the channel grow. And if you are not, please consider subscribing. That, of course, is we're trying to get to 25,000 subs now. So please help us with that. If you are here, we appreciate everybody. But the news today, before we get to your comments, sources told us just before we came to air that the Pac-12 is going to likely lose Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah as a group to the Big 12. And very interesting, there's been a lot of questions about what the Arizona Board of Regents has to or does not have to do. The people that we've spoken to, there's a pretty strong belief there that the Arizona Board of Regents does not have to act to allow Arizona or Arizona State to move. There's a pretty strong belief that Arizona and Arizona State can do what they want to do. And I think that this executive session yesterday pretty well cemented that. I mean, I think it's pretty clear from what we've been told that Bobby Robbins at Arizona, the president, he pretty much is in control of this situation. Michael Crow and the Board of Regents are going to fall in lockstep with Bobby Robbins. And I can tell you that Bobby Robbins and Michael Crow, the president in Arizona State, have talked daily, multiple times about this situation. That's what we were told. I am told that Taylor Randall, Robbins, and Crow have all spoken regularly about this. This process is well down the road. Well down the road. So I feel really strongly that that is going to happen. I would think it's going to be a larger undertaking than just flipping a switch like Colorado had done. Because I don't believe that Utah had been in process of this at all until the weekend. I think once the weekend got here, that's when real serious conversations happen. Because the other thing you got to remember is all of these presidents knew the TV deals that were available to them. They knew this Apple deal was coming. This was not some, oh my God, he's got it. That's not what this was. This was already presented. They had already talked about this Apple option where 99% of the games were on Apple. One game a week was on probably ESPN on a Friday night. Your third best game on a Friday night on ESPN. They knew this was possible. They knew this was their deal. I think the Colorado situation, the animus in the conversations, because we were also told in the Pac-12 that the tenor and the tone of the conversations had changed, that there were a lot more presidents at the table willing to leave the conference. And by that, I mean they had indicated weakening support for the future of the Pac-12 in conversations that happened Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And we're told that's where Bobby Robbins and Michael Crow and then Taylor Randall started talking about, hey, well, we probably have to do this because this conference is not going to survive. And I think their worst fears were confirmed Tuesday when that TV deal was presented yesterday morning. I think that was simply a confirmation. I don't think it was a revelation of any kind. I don't think it was any new information of any kind. I think it was simply a confirmation that the dream is over. Mm-hmm. It is dead now. It is time to move on from this conference. And I think that's why you're hearing today Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah now are having serious discussions with the Big 12 about those three capping off Big 12 expansion. And I think that's why today you're hearing Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal are likely going to be invited to the Big 10 because now we see the road. Now we see the avenues. The path to the next iteration of college football is laid out, and it is very clear. You can stay in the Pac-12 and become irrelevant, or you can take Arizona, Arizona State, and Colorado and move to the Big 12. Mm-hmm. You can take the northern contingent of Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal to the Big 10, and Oregon State and Washington State will eventually migrate to the Mountain West. I think that is almost surely to happen before kickoff of the college football season because there's not a conference commissioner in this country that wants this dragging into the season.
Yeah.
There are big games week 0 is pretty weak, but early in the season for all of these schools that we are talking about, their football teams have very big games. The focus needs to be on football. That's the mantra in the world right now. The focus needs to be on football when we are playing football, not on conference realignment. And I think that's why you're getting that news today.
Well, and I think that's why a school like Colorado acts so swiftly.
Yes.
Right? Like, think about Colorado's situation. I mean, it might be quite literally the best example of what you're pointing out, which is, hey, dude, we can't have expansion or realignment be a distraction during Deion's first season, right?
No.
Like, we got to act and we got to have reliability, to which I say, schools like Utah, as we've been saying over and over, and I want to reiterate this because I know we've got folks up there that listen. Dude, I love Utah. I felt a little bit annoyed about how loyal they had been to the conference. But at the same time, I've said many times, and we have said many times, they're not stupid. They understand how to run a great university. So it doesn't surprise me that they picked up the phone and they said, okay, when there's no going back, we got to call good old Bobby down south and get this thing done.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that that's how it went down. I want to remind you that we want to send you to see BYU and the Natty making history down in Provo, Utah, as BYU. Should I say pops their cherry? Is that inappropriate? I think that's an honor code violation at BYU.
Yeah.
As BYU takes their initial bow at Lavelle Edwards Stadium, they're going to play their first Big 12 conference game at home against the Natty on September 29th at 8:15. This Friday, we are going to announce a winner. Here's how you enter the contest. One of two ways. Keep kicking ass at Super Chicks because we've had so many people go into Super Chicks in Ogden on Riverdale Road. Also, our contingent down in St. George in the GZ. All you have to do is go in, take a picture of yourself at Super Chicks, take a picture of your food with a receipt that's got a date on it. Hit me on Twitter. Hit Jake on Twitter. The Monty Show. MONTY The Monty Show. SLC Jake. Hit him on Twitter. By the way, he has like 17 followers on Twitter. Can somebody please go follow Jake on Twitter?
Yeah, please. You know, I'm terrible at Twitter and X and stuff.
I'm sorry. Please. Follow Jake on X,
Yeah,
please.
let's do some Xing.
DM us or tag us in your pictures. Tweet it out. We'll enter you in the contest. Now, a lot of people said, I need a better way to enter. I really want to win the tickets to the BYU game.
I want it.
Bucked Up Energy has stepped up to the plate, my friends. If you can't get the Super Chicks, show us you're bucked up. Every day at this time on the show, you know what we do? We hit a buckshot from Bucked Up Energy.
And again, points for creativity here, right?
Points for creativity.
Love all the Super Chick stuff we're getting. Keep going to Super Chicks. Love it. But points for creativity, man. Like, let's see what you can do as we pop some buckshot from Bucked Up Energy.
Man, I'll tell you, buckedup.com. Use the promo code Monty20 to get 20% off your purchase at buckedup.com. But you guys, show me a can of Bucked Up in your car. Show me you drinking a can of Bucked Up. Show me that you ordered Buckshot. Show me you ordered protein powder. Anything having to do with Bucked Up, show it to me. We'll enter you in the contest.